Hello and welcome back to RageGamingVideos and a new rogue build. We're back to update Dance of Knives for Season 6 because now I'm back with Mythic uniques, new skill setups, lots of little tweaks that have made the damage significantly better. And as you can see, we are absolutely blasting through content. From pit levels 70, 75, 80, whatever, we're doing great. And I would say right now this build is easily capable of 90s and beyond with your perfect masterworking and true perfect setup. But if that's not something that appeals to you and you just want to be everything in the game, achieve the strongest build possible that's going to kill everything that you see on screen within a millisecond, well, this is it. I've managed to weave in poison perks without running poison imbue, allowing me to run shadow imbue for much more explosive, wider range DPS, which addresses some of the issues that we're facing with this longer Dance of Knives version that's about momentum rather than victimize. As I said in the last build, victimize was gutted and changed in very strange ways that just didn't have great synergy with Dance of Knives anymore. By running shadow imbue, we're getting that kind of victimize style explosion everywhere without the internal cooldown, and man, does it feel good. Flying this quick, killing everything that comes near you. But beyond the changes that I've made that I'll explain in a moment, there's been buffs to the build and rogue in general. Just two main things really. Preparation has had a change with Dance of Knives, where it actually restores the stacks. So it means we're able to take those sharper 90-degree or jagged turns occasionally in those tighter areas, in the tighter dungeons, without losing the spin. And that is absolutely wonderful. Preparation basically became our only option, and it was just a fine one after you kind of outscale needing combo points to extend the spin. So yeah, this feels great. I'm glad they did it. They also actually put Shroud of False Death in the game with its incredible +1 to all passives and the kind of bursty nature of the stealth thing. Let me explain. Because we're running Kanjar, because we want the attack speed, you're never actually going to get the benefits of breaking stealth with an attack. It just sucks because you need to maintain this buff. Logically, with the way that Dance of Knives works, I should break stealth with Dance of Knives and get that massive damage bonus from the chest permanently, because there's loads of ways that that works and does work hand in hand. But sadly, it just doesn't work that way. It does not actively snapshot on Dance of Knives. It just, for the first knife throw, gives it that bonus and then drops it. Very strange. There's a lot that I've been learning in regards to snapshotting though, and we will address in this video. For example, the fact that concealment is meant to give you critical strike chance that's guaranteed and vulnerable gen for 6 seconds. So as I press concealment and then snapshot that onto Dance of Knives, this should be giving me guaranteed critical strike chance and vulnerable gen for 6 seconds. And as you can see, every attack is critting, every single one. And also the target's always purple, so it's always vulnerable. But that's meant to only last for 6 seconds, and here it is, still critting, still vulnerable. That's a permanent snapshot for Dance of Knives. And yet, sadly, this isn't. But with that relevant concealment mention in mind, we don't need any critical strike chance in the build. We don't need any vulnerable gen in the build. So, having learned that, I've realized that there's a lot of cleanup I could do in the skill tree, such as losing countering Dark Shroud, since we don't need critical strike chance, or say in the Paragon, completely dropping the exploit glyph because we don't need that vulnerable gen. Though increasing vulnerable damage is nice, there's other things that we can do to increase our damage more and make more bursty gameplay. You'll see with this update then that as I am now running 2 Mythic uniques, I've made different changes to the build in terms of the Paragon, even the gems in our gear, and my understanding of how to successfully snapshot Dance of Knives better. We just have this much greater burst. By running Shadow Imbue, we're able to deal with the annoying wallers or purple shielders much more effectively. There's no doubt that running Poison Imbue is better if you're just doing specifically single target DPS, so maybe you're just farming bosses over and over, it's worth it to swap back to that. But for normal content, you get to have much more bursty gameplay, and therefore we're freeing up an aspect slot, no longer needing that Noxus Poison aspect. I've worked back into Bolt's Will like from the Stepping Stone build, because just like I explained back then, we get a big damage bonus when we generate Unstoppable and for 5 seconds after. And with Stall and Vigor, where we permanently have momentum, this means Unstoppable every 8 seconds for 3 seconds. So, for 3 seconds we have Unstoppable, and for 5 seconds after we have the perk, so every 8 seconds we have this damage bonus, and Stall and Vigor procs every 8 seconds. So it's incredible synergy I'm happy to have back. With that, you'll also notice that I changed my boots back to normal boots, meaning we get extra levels of Dance of Knives there. Since I've managed to overcome the resistance to all, that cap is now achieved without actually needing those boots. Let's talk about another thing that we've come to understand with the rogue and the weirdness of playing this for my first season. And it's the fact that I've got ultimate damage gems in my weapons. And that's because of the Paragon that we talked about before, no witnesses. As it states, your ultimate skills gain an additional 10% times damage from your damage with ultimate bonus. So, as you actually get more damage with ultimate bonus, the stronger that becomes. But the second part, grant this bonus to all skills for 10 seconds, means that comes over to Dance of Knives. So by having more ultimate damage, you are increasing the damage of Dance of Knives, assuming that's always going. And since I'm running Shadow Clone, I get that bonus when I press that, but also because we're running the rune, for a variety of reasons, Petrify, stunning enemies, we get increased damage to stunned enemies from, Frostbitten and Retribution. Every time that procs, it's not just about increasing the damage to the now CC targets because the Petrify procced, that's an ultimate skill being used, and therefore proccing no witnesses. So with that understanding in mind, I've actually made more of a priority to pick up all the ultimate damage nodes that I can find in the Paragon, and I'm feeling it with the Dance of Knives damage being even better. As you've seen though, I've also managed to get Air of Perdition in the build, just like we planned to last time. Massive damage increase, 60% times, alongside benefits of Lucky Chance of movement speed too. Right now, I feel as though I've crammed everything I possibly can into this build, and there's even a second consideration for some weirdness to do with grenades and grenade skills that we'll mention at the end. But overall, as you can see, we've made a lot of changes since last time. Since we're not running Poison Imbue, I'm still actually getting the benefit of alchemical advantage through something as simple as running a temper that generates poison damage on my weapon. Just in the same way we're getting frost procs by Lucky Hit Chance to Freeze on defensive tools like our boots. The only thing I can really do to push this build further is to finish actually masterworking everything to 12 out of 12 and also min-maxing that so that it hits the right stuff perfectly. But that's a lot of RNG. I've desperately been trying to work in this amulet that gives me frigid finesse levels and weapon mastery levels, but it means I need to really get armor from somewhere, such as perfect masterworking on these boots, working in skulls into the jewelry, and more focus on armor in the Paragon. That's the true 99% to 100% difference that only true grinders are going to look for and ultimately spend weeks trying to achieve. We'll cover everything as we go on topics of that nature if that interests you, but this build is just the strongest version of Dance of Knives that I can give you right now. So with all that said, let's explain everything. First up then, specializations. We're still running preparation, especially with the new buffs in the recent patch to make it restore stacks of Dance of Knives, allowing us to take sharper turns and so on, and basically spin infinitely so much easier. It's a really nice change. In regards to the skill tree then, we have Blade Shift just to have a generator for our Kanjar. There are benefits of this though. If you're low on resistance to all resistances, you could take Primary, but I don't need to. On the next tree, we're still taking Max Sturdy and of course Siphoning Strikes for damage reduction and lifesteal. On the next tree, we max out Dance of Knives and still take it to Disciplined. We max out Weapon Mastery as one of our most important passives in the game, and Unstable Elixirs to give us a damage bonus by drinking potions. We'll talk about that in the rune section again. Trick Attacks means dazing and stunned enemies, we deal increased critical strike damage to them. And also I've got just 2 levels in Rugged to save me 1 single skill point down later in the tree. Coming down to the next points then, we still have Concealment, Enhanced all the way to Subverting. This means it's always critically striking and vulnerable. That's the snapshot that's so important. We have 1 point into Agile and 1 point into Evasive, just for some bonuses to dodge attacks and damage reductions from that. Maxing out Dark Shroud as much as we can, and just enhancing it for the movement speed, since we've got permanent crit strike chance anyway. Of course, we max out Exploit and Malice for their damage. And that brings us to Imbuments. Here, we take 5 out of 5 Shadow Imbuement, because we want this to be as effective as possible to AoE burst as much as possible. We enhance that and take it to Mixed though, just to further increase non-physical damage it deals. As you can see, we have 1 point Deadly Venom, so that we can get to Alchemical Advantage for the attack speed and Lucky Chance that provides whenever poison damage actually occurs. So as long as we're generating some kind of poison damage every 8 seconds, we're good. And like I said, through a simple temper of up to a 40% chance to deal poison damage, we are getting that perk without having to use Poison Imbuement. Also, Frigid Finesse, massive increased damage to shield and frozen enemies of course. Down on the next tree then, we still take our ultimate, Shadow Clone, and just bring that to Prime. We don't care about the ultimate itself dealing damage, we're just getting a lot of perks by pressing the thing and triggering ultimates in general. Impetus still 3 out of 3, and then 1 point second wind, so we can get to haste to max that out for movement speed and also potential attack speed. And then yeah, key passive is still momentum. All of that is very important to say that movement speed is vital. Your movement speed wants to be 200%, as that is the cap. You get a load of movement speed from this build. Actively Dance of Knives gives you some. By having Dark Shroud active, you get some from that. And we do have movement speed, say on our boots as well, to get us to that 200% every time. Next up then, let's do Paragon very quick. It's only changed slightly in the form of one glyph, dropping exploit because of the snapshot from concealment, and just slotting in canny, since this improves your non-physical damage, so our shadow explosions are hitting a lot harder. There isn't exactly great options. The only real thing you're going to find is, say, damage reduction and increased close damage as an alternative in the form of turf. Anyway, this is the starter board, same as before, versatility, activating that with Dex, and here's how I spend my points. Next board is the same as it was before, Dance Macabre. Casting mobility or subterfuge skills increases the damage of your next skill, so mobility and subterfuge, Dark Shroud, concealment, right before we spin is how we get that big damage increase. We path through the tree like so, making sure to come into Brawler for damage reduction and increased damage to close enemies, and also Skulker to get us to more resistance to all elements. The glyph here is Canny. This is where it's easily slotted in as an intelligence glyph. We just want to get 25 and it's easily done. And then we come to the next board, which is still exploit weakness, increasing our damage when we hit vulnerable targets, which we're always doing. And the glyph here is still control, easy to get more intelligence here, for more damage to crowd controlled enemies, specifically frozen and stunned. Here's how I spend my points to also get a bit of extra intelligence within the board easily. You'll note that I come to the right to extend to another board, and by coming through there, we can pick up exploit for more vulnerable damage and lucky at chance. Coming by unassailable, more damage reduction from vulnerable enemies. And as we come up to the top here, you can snag toughened for more max life and potential armor if you need that, and also lots of cold res and maximum cold resistance too. By coming to the right then with those final boards, we can come to our next board, which is No Witnesses. As I explained earlier, ultimate damage is increasing the damage to all skills, so we want lots of that, and you can find a good amount of it here on the board. The glyph here though is Devious, just getting that 40 dexterity triggered. I'm pretty min-maxed on this board though, picking up all the ultimate damage nodes that I can, weaving my way through training for more resistance and max life, coming over the top to get No Witnesses, and also dipping over here for colour. As I said last time, I wanted to hit this and now I have, is extra non-physical attack damage and attack speed, as well as ultimate nodes for extra damage there. For the final board then, we just work our way down the couple of points that are right here, and this, as before, is Cheap Shot. On this board then, for the glyph, we still have Headhunter, as this is going to give us a load of extra dexterity, and there's a ton on this one specifically. With the rest of the points that I'm working on, this is where I'm going to pick up a load of dex and get a lot more dexterity because of it. Because of the perk of this glyph, I'm getting 8 extra dexterity instead of 5 per that I can pick up here. But I've only got 214 levels right now, so with the rest of my Paragon points, I'm basically just picking up the last magic nodes I'm missing, and then filling up glyphs like Headhunter and Control in particular. But yeah, on the final board you can see that I do come around to get more resistance to all elements for Deviant, and come down to the bottom left for a little bit more damage to crowd control enemies and the nodes around that. But yeah, that's the Paragon. Not a lot has changed, just one glyph because the other one wasn't that effective in the form of exploit. Next up, let's mention Mercenaries. As before, the main one is Vayana for the attack speed through Hysteria and Bloodlust, and the second one is whatever you would like. I find that still Rahir is easiest with Bastion, triggering on my imbuement, because it's just a big damage bubble that gives me damage reduction and also a bit of unstoppable. Right, time for the big one, the gear. So as usual, I will try to be efficient on this. So, Mythic uniques are a given. The two that I'm running are Heir of Perdition for the raw damage increase that provides, and as I've explained, Shroud of False Death for the all passives, all stats, and max life. The whole stealth thing is nice for movement speed, and breaking that for a bit of extra damage is a nice concept, but does not work in this gameplay sadly. Still, the +1 to all passives is so insanely impactful that it is more than worth it. We're still running Fists of Fate on the gloves. You want a top roll on that, and attack speed is the most important thing here. On the legs, we have Tibalt's Will, as I have worked that back in from the Stepping Stone build, since we do not need Poison Imbuement in the build. Lastly, I've really got on top of my all resistances, so normal boots for the frostbitten aspect, that's what we're running there. With the weapon, we have dropped the bow and gone for a crossbow. It's a lot more vulnerable damage. On it, we still run Synergy as before. On the amulet, it's still Stolen Vigor. On the rings, it's still Clandestine and Star Shards for those classic effects. We're still running the very important unique dagger, the Kanjar. If you can get a top roll on that, that would be amazing. But obviously the weapon mastery levels is really important. Lastly, it is Retribution on the other weapon. So that's the aspects. Let's talk affixes. We cannot change the affixes on any of the mythic uniques or uniques. However, again for the Fist of Fates, I just want to really highlight that you want a top roll for the actual skill, and the attack speed is the thing that matters. The thing that does not matter at all here is critical strike chance. So it's the same on the other pieces that have that. It's useless because we have this concealment guaranteed snapshot for Dance of Knives. So if you're looking for Fist of Fate, focus on the skill and attack speed in particular. Right, down to the boots then that we can actually talk about. You need levels of Dance of Knives, and you're going to need a specific element resistance on this piece. Because we're able to get 3 specific element resistances in our gems, we get a good amount from our Paragon. You're going to be missing on one of these, and that's where I slot it in. I also have armor here because I'm desperately trying to swap out that amulet as I showed earlier. I am trying to fit this amulet in that has frigid finesse levels and weapon mastery, but I won't have enough armor if I do that now, so I have some serious min-maxing with masterworking and armor and all this kind of stuff, and I can get more in the Paragon if I really pushed it, but it's very tough and something I'm working towards. In any case, on the weapon it's the same as before. Dex, max life, vulnerable damage, or crit damage would be a good alternative to the vulnerable damage. On the amulet then, as I've shown, unstable elixirs, frigid finesse, and weapon mastery are going to be some of the most impactful passives you can get. Ideally, I would aim for weapon mastery. Then you've got frigid finesse, unstable elixirs, things like exploit and malice below that. But the most important thing you need to do is have your armor and have your all resistances. And the amulet can be very impactful for that. That's why I'm using that. On the rings then, it's the same as before. Dexterity and attack speed, those are what you need. And then you kind of have a free slot. For me, I've gone for resistance to all elements to hit my caps. On the other ring that's not perfect, I have max life, crit strike damage, and shadow resistance because I was lacking on shadow resistance. So again, that third slot can be the way you solve those issues. On the one-hand weapon then, dexterity, max life, crit strike damage, that's what I'm aiming for on the weapon. So that's affixes, let's talk tempers. So down onto the boots, we have that % chance to cause freeze. Super important, we need that in the build, and now we've got so many set uniques, we must get that in the right slots. So on the boots it's a given. Otherwise it doesn't matter, I have movement speed to help me always be at the cap, but I'm kind of over cap. For the crossbow then, we have chance for Dance of Knives to deal double damage. This is important. It needs to be on your two-hand weapon, and you need to have that on the highest roll possible, because we're having to give up that temper for the whole generate poison thing we're doing on a weapon. Otherwise, damage per Dark Shroud Shadow as before. So on the other weapon, you can see that I've got cutthroat attack speed. More attack speed means more damage for Dance of Knives. Then the other thing that we talked about, the lucky chance to generate poison damage. Super important to generate our passive alchemical advantage, so we're not able to fit the chance for Dance of Knives to deal double damage on that slot. So that's why it has to be a high roll on your two-hand weapon. Right, the amulet. Chance to freeze or stun is going to be what you're aiming for, assuming you've got the chance for freeze on your boots. And then again, damage per Dark Shroud Shadow. Same as before on the rings, Dark Shroud cooldown reduction and damage per Dark Shroud, that's what I aim for there. So that's the tempers, now masterworking. For the helmet, we aim for a lucky hit chance. On the chest piece, we're aiming for all stats. On the gloves, we're aiming for attack speed. On the legs, we're aiming for damage reduction while unstoppable, or all stats. On the boots, we want to level Dance of Knives as much as possible. On the two-hand weapon, we're looking for chance for Dance of Knives. We want that as high as possible, remember? On the weapon, I'd aim for attack speed from cutthroat skills. On the amulet, you want to raise the passive levels as much as possible. So that'd be unstable elixirs on this one. Or on my other one, that'd be weapon mastery and then frigid finesse. For the rings, it'd be attack speed in particular, or damage per Dark Shroud. For the unique weapon, the Kanjar, it'd be weapon mastery levels. So that's tempering. Now, gems and runes. Gems as before. In the armor, we have dexterity. In the two-hand crossbow, I've got the critical strike damage. And then in the other weapons, I have the ultimate damage. Again, as I explained earlier in the Paragon and before, that is to enhance the current bonus of no witnesses. The more extra ultimate damage you have, the more that's going to apply to all skills like Dance of Knives. I'm actually not at my maximum bonus, even when I've got a couple gems for it. In terms of runes though, it's the same as before. The most consistent way to generate quacks, which means your next non-basic skill costs all your primary resource but deals 100% increased damage, is to use potions. Drinking 2 potions using the Yaks rune will generate enough offering for the quacks. This also perfectly synergizes with an important skill, Unstable Elixirs, which increases their damage by a multiplier after you use a healing potion. So that's a given. On the legs, again, also super important. I did explain alternatives to this before, but now you must have this. The Petrify from Druid, Yom, is going to be an ultimate skill that procs a stun. That's great for a load of reasons, but again, because it's an ultimate skill, it is proccing no witnesses. So keeping this consistently buffing our damage is very important. To generate Yom and proc the Petrify then, we're using back, which is just travel 50 meters to generate enough offering to then proc Petrify. But that's all the same as it was before. Now then, a little acknowledgement of something that we're seeing in the rogue community right now in regards to Dance of Knives. Basically, rogues are testing a weird concept to do with Dance of Knives by turning it into a totally different skill. That is because if instead of taking Disciplined, which has that chance to pierce, which is very valuable, you can instead take Methodical. When you stop channeling Dance of Knives, drop up to whatever stun grenades. That is terrible, and most people are going to ignore it for that reason. But why people are testing it and messing with it right now is if I take this skill and put it into the passive, you can see that when I hover over Dance of Knives, it is now a grenade skill, as well as agility and cutthroat. So if we look at grenade related aspects, you can see Artful Initiative, blah blah blah, does stuff with grenades. Then it says your stun grenades deal 40% increased damage. This actually works for Dance of Knives when you've turned it into a grenade skill. So it makes Dance of Knives deal 40% damage. That's really cool. The problem here is that it's additive. It says 40%. It doesn't say multiplier. It's not times. So I'm not sure if it's actually worth it. If I were to try to do something like that, I would have to give up something like Retribution, which is damage increase and a multiplier. I'm not going to give up Star Shards, so it'd have to be Clandestine, which is 3 levels to Dance of Knives, increasing its damage a massive amount. So it's very adjacent damage. Definitely an increase, but is it competitive? Is it more? The answer would definitely be no if it was just to do with aspects, but there are Paragon glyphs that are going to enhance your stun grenade damage, and that's where this is going to be a lot more relevant. So it's something I want to look into and test before I bring it to you guys. But it is a very clever idea and something that is being tested right now. Alright, lastly, a super quick gameplay guide, just in case that you're new to Dance of Knives. Maybe you've not watched my other build videos as I've progressed with the skill, learned more about it, and all the snapshotting stuff. To keep it simple, before you press Dance of Knives, you want to apply as many buffs as you can to it. So, for example, we drink 2 potions to activate our Quack skill. So as I drink this potion, you can see it fills up. It's ready to go. Before I get going, I make sure to build up some stacks from the can jar. This skill right here, increased attack speed per stack. Once I reach 5 stacks, I'm ready to go. So I get 5 stacks, I drink 2 potions, I activate Dark Shroud, I activate Imbuement, I activate Concealment, I pop my ult, and then I begin spinning. And that's when you're seeing these ridiculous numbers, where I'm going between millions of damage, hundreds of millions of damage, and yes, I am occasionally hitting 1 billion damage with my current build. So I think it's pretty damn bursty and pretty effective, and I don't think that rotation is that complicated once you get used to it. But there you have it. That is my current overview of the Dance of Knives build in Season 6. This is the most bursty, effective, high DPS, most enjoyable version, especially after the patch where preparation restores our stacks. I hope that this has given you the next step to really work to that super powerful point. And while this build is obviously not the best option we have for pushing pit levels, I believe that's rapid fire. I think it's our best option for everything else, and in terms of fun, it's easily my top pick. But obviously I put a lot of work into it, so please drop a like if you liked it. For now then, I've been Hollow, you've been you, thank you for watching, see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.